This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Welcome everybody to the Brighton Central School District Board of Education Business and Goal Setting Meeting for August the 11th, 2020. Please take note that the Board of Education of the Brighton Central School District, in response to the continuing emergency circumstances caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and consistent with the New York State Governor's executive orders, is conducting its scheduled meeting today, August 11th, via Zoom and stream through our district website. We will offer the opportunity for public comment. Those that are attending the meeting on Zoom, I ask you to please enter the chat function and place your name if you would like to make a comment or ask a question of the board shortly under public comment. Any other members of the public, certainly at any time, are welcome to contact the board through District Clerk Kim Lanzafame or any of the board members directly. Our contact information is on the website if you have a question or a comment or anything that you would like to share directly with the board. At this point, I'd like to ask board, please, for approval of our agenda for this morning.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Karen and seconded by Andrea. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That's 7 in favor, none opposed. At this point, then, we do offer the opportunity for public participation. Again, anyone who is on the Zoom, members of the public who would like to address the board, comment, or ask a question, please utilize the chat function on the bottom of the Zoom screen just to give us your name, and we will call on you to ask for your input. So, Dr. McGowan, do we have anybody at this point?
Nobody has yet entered in the chat asking to address the board.
Okay, thank you. I will remind folks who may be watching us live or a rebroadcast, and we're going to talk about quite a bit this morning, reopening and plans moving forward and communications with our public. Certainly members of the public have, if you are a parent, a family of students in school, you have received multiple communication efforts with regard to reopening and communication and meetings that are scheduled this week and into next. And we encourage everyone to take advantage of those opportunities to ask questions about reopening. And if you have any questions further or want to share further input, again, you're welcome to email the board directly at any point in time for further response. So moving forward right now, board members, may we have an approval of the minutes from our July 2nd, 2020 reorganizational meeting?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Larry and seconded by Julene. Does anyone have any additions to those minutes, corrections, or deletions for Kim? All in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. That's 7 in favor and none opposed. To start off on a very high note today, we do have a teacher tenure recommendation of Aaron Dwyer. Let's have a motion for approval of that tenure, and then we will turn over to Dr. McGowan briefly for some comments. So a motion, please, for approval for the tenure recommendation for Aaron Dwyer.
So moved. Karen.
Second.
Moved by Andrea, seconded by Karen. Dr. McGowan.
Thank you very much, and so excited. I know Aaron's on screen today too. Glad you could join us, Aaron. Such a valuable member of our health and physical education staff. I speak from experience as someone who had a child in one of Aaron's classes. Just an outstanding person. Aaron is a two-time graduate of Brockport with a degree in physical education and a master's in adapted physical education. She has her certifications in phys ed and in health. She's a teacher in Attica, then Letchworth, then Allendale before finding her home with us, thank goodness, at the high school and at Council Rock. She's also coached modified basketball and was a varsity assistant in the field hockey program as well. You know, a few comments from Dr. Hall in particular, and I know Nate Merritt has joined into this recommendation as well. They've observed that in her phys ed and health classes, Erin is professional, competent, passionate, caring, enthusiastic, extremely collaborative. She has an incredible gift for being reflective in her practice. She's created unique, authentic, and challenging experiences, and she works so tirelessly to create an instructional environment that emphasizes individualized instruction, collaboration, engaging lifelong activities. She's developed a one-to-one device environment in her classroom where kids regularly and seamlessly integrate technology into their class period. She makes health very worthwhile for kids at an age level where they need it, where they need to understand the choices they're making and the impact that they have. And she engages kids in that conversation very openly, very thoughtfully, and very meaningfully. As Nate Merritt said, she's been an amazing addition to the department, continues to look at new and innovative ways to connect with kids. Health and from her looking at things through a very creative lens. She's a great member of the school community, not only during the school day, but she's often seen on the sideline as a coach or just a fan at performances and games with her students. I bumped into her and her wonderful family several times, and I know that she's just there simply to engage with her kids and be supportive of them outside the classroom. As Dr. Hall said, he's truly enjoyed his visits to her phys ed classrooms, the different conversations they've had about teaching and learning. She's an asset to students, the phys ed department, the health department, and the high school. And he, Mayor, myself, are all proud and honored to recommend her for tenure. She'll continue to make contributions to the high school and to Brighton for many years to come. So with that, I thank you very much for considering this recommendation, and I thank Erin for all of her service.
Thank you so much.
And your family.
Congratulations, Aaron.
Congratulations, Aaron. Well, I guess we have to call the vote right now, right? So thank you, Dr. McGowan, for sharing that. Aaron, certainly thank you for who you are and all that you do for Brighton students and families. All in favor, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed. 7 in favor, none opposed. So again, now congratulations formally, Aaron.
Thank you.
The best tenure appointment. That goes down in the record books.
Fantastic. So we're going to go back to Dr. McGowan and for a presentation on reopening plans and current status and where we are. Dr. McGowan.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. So it's a combination of the next two items on the agenda regarding both reopening and our blueprint planning. And there's a reason why they're combined. A lot of detail here in our community has received an extensive amount of detail. So we'll try and stick to the 1,000-foot view and move relatively quickly through because our community has several opportunities to engage with both principals and at the district level in some virtual town halls with some additional questions. So this is a two-part presentation, as I said. And the first I would like to go through is around blueprint. And it's interesting to consider the idea that we were still doing strategic planning in the midst of this current situation. And the point of this was the organization needs to continue to move forward. We still need to grow. We still need to be the organization we are relative to innovation and addressing important issues in our school district. Whether we are virtual, whether we are hybrid, whatever we are, the work continues. And the importance of the work, frankly, has only grown over time. And so we did need to pause very, very briefly in two different ways from the ongoing pandemic planning that was happening and the adjustments that were being made to think about how to continue to move the organization forward, but not be tone deaf or obtuse to the idea that I'm different in this moment. And most of our energy needs to be focused on, above all else, health, safety, wellness, but also the instructional components that go into managing an instructional institution, a learning institution during a time of crisis. So we really adjusted along the way. And in spring of 2020, we followed along the normal plan we would have in terms of our blueprint relative to assessing our goals, reporting them out, gathering community feedback through thought exchange. And that feedback was limited to two areas that we identified as the most important work for us at the moment and putting, to quote a phrase, the first things first, which is around diversity, equity, and reopening, and trying to get feedback from our community on those two key issues. And then we conducted our annual blueprint team planning day, but we did that virtually, and it looked different. We had just a huge turnout of people involved in that conversation, many community members in addition to our staff. And we made a decision along the way to really create intermediate focus plans as opposed to the broader strategic plan that we have, which is typically already a pretty focused strategic plan. It's not a very ivory tower, sit on a shelf, heavy on words type of plan. It is typically pretty practical and focused as it is, but we really needed to narrow on two very specific issues, and that was diversity, equity, and reopening. So during the summer, if you see that middle bar there, the leadership team and Board of Education reviewed preliminary action plans that were developed by that blueprint team, nearly 100 people from throughout the community who participated in those conversations. And then we developed proposed action plans, and we're asking for the board today to adopt an intermediate focused blueprint. So it's not the typical blueprint. It's very focused on some very specific action plans, which I'll walk you through today. And then the plan would be to implement those throughout this year, provide the regular reports that we have on our blueprint planning, and refocus to hopefully a different time when we're all in a different situation. And we can go back to our blueprint planning as we typically would have it, which has a broader, longer view for the 21-22 school year. So what does that look like? We typically have priority areas in our plan. They last year were systems. We'll still have those. We're not going to walk away from systems. We're just not really talking about enhancing those systems or changing them very differently right now. They are what they are in terms of curriculum review, the types of ongoing systems in the district. Mental health and wellness, clearly woven into the work that we're doing, just not pulled out necessarily as a separate area. Academic rigor for all students. We will still have academic rigor for all students. We're just not continuing to actively pursue plans in this very moment for a specific project related to that. Yet the strategies that have been used and that have expanded the number of kids in our most rigorous coursework will continue. All of this work will still happen. We're just not embarking on new particular projects within this plan. And then diversity equity, which as we shift over to the right-hand side of your screen, we see became a primary focus for us going into this year. And those two areas are reopening and diversity equity. Reopening broke down into two particular areas and a task force that studied both of those areas, which I'll touch on today. One was safety, and that was particularly the operations part of the task force, and instruction was the other part of the task force to really think about teaching and learning in the midst of the pandemic and what it would mean relative to reopening. And then we focused on diversity equity, and the blueprint day itself, the planning day that was held with community members, looked at these two areas, and there were two of the 10 or so groups that looked at reopening, one from instruction and one from safety. And the rest of the groups were looking at issues very specific, but related to diversity equity. And they were relative to staff and the work that we do with staff members around hiring, particular training. We'll get into those action items, students, particular practices in the district around family engagement, things like that, around how kids are engaging in our school program, and materials and programs. So culturally responsive curriculum in particular, and the type of ways we are addressing diversity and equity within the materials we're purchasing and providing to students, and how teaching and learning looks for them from a material program perspective. So into the reopening process, on the left-hand side, an explanation really of our preliminary planning. And as I mentioned, we had a thought exchange to gather feedback on diversity, equity, and online instruction. We also had done survey work asking people how online work panned out for them in the springtime, and had parent feedback that way as well, and internal feedback from the staff. We did some internal assessment of that work in the spring and collaborative work with the Brighton Teachers Association, in the form particularly of negotiations as we were wrapping up contract negotiations, but incorporated that into our conversation. And that's continued into the summer. In fact, there's a meeting still happening in a couple hours from now for that group to continue that conversation as partners in the work. And we had the blueprint planning day, and reopening again was a focus area. Moving into the check mark, the reopening task force then met multiple times this summer, and it was broken down into operation and instruction subcommittees. Meetings were held, the guidance reviewed from Department of Health and the State Ed Department, which continues to evolve, frankly, on a daily basis. And then draft plans were developed and shared with the community, shifting over to leadership team planning and communication. We provided draft plans to the community, held a virtual town hall, really did a lot to gather additional feedback, again, utilizing thought exchange, had, I want to say nearly 900 questions or comments, really making space for the quiet ones, giving everybody an opportunity to weigh in and see what each other's questions and comments are, and really understand community sentiment. Have put together frequently asked question documents and thought about how to visually represent some of this work to condense and be focused in our communication and clear with people as well. We've since finalized plans and created an implementation plan, which really are the details that people are asking for around specific protocol and what the day would look like, both in the hybrid sense, the online sense, the health types of protocols, the clubs, activities, facility use, all the details around that, and distributed that last evening. And now following on the right-hand side, the implementation plan. Again, community feedback, commitments indicated. We'll get more community feedback through a series of virtual town hall events and PTSA meeting with the principals. We'll be meeting Wednesday night at 7 p.m. and then Zoom invite will go out later this afternoon for people to have a link to that. We encourage people to participate. And 5 p.m. next Monday. And each of the buildings is hosting a meeting with the principal as well for very specific building related questions, which I think would be really valuable for community members to participate in. We're asking people to commit though by next Monday at 8 p.m. That's the 17th at 8 p.m. Every single student needs to have a survey filled out on their behalf. Every single student needs to indicate if they're coming to school or not coming to school. We will support students and families regardless, whatever their choice is. We are very supportive of that. We feel like we've created a hybrid approach that is safe, that is reasonable, that will be meaningful, that will be helpful to families, and we hope they'll participate in that. But we also deeply respect the perspective that people have on their own children and the decision they need to make relative to safety for their family as well. And so there is an opportunity for people to be all online or all remote, as it were. I don't want to confuse our terminology. And I'll go through a couple of those details right now, but we want people, again, to continue to remember we need to hear from them. And we'll be sending reminders, we'll be following up with families. And the reason why we need to hear from every family is that this scheduling will be very different than scheduling we've ever done before. And so certainty with knowing who is coming will help us best balance our classes, best accommodate changes that people are asking us to make, and really make the most effective and safe schedule possible. But we need to know who's coming to be able to do that. That will also help us offer the most effective online program, knowing very specifically the numbers of kids, what courses they need, particularly at the 6-12 level, but also what grade levels will need an online component and to what degree as well. So the more concrete the information, the better plan we can make and the better scheduling we can do, which is why we're asking for every single family to fill that out. And again, even on the transportation side, we're hoping that many people will opt out of transportation. We will provide it as it is our obligation to do so, and we will do so safely. But where possible, we're hoping that families will be able to safely transport their child to school so that we can create more social distance on buses and have the most efficient and safe program possible. But we need to hear from every family in that regard as well, so that we can do the best job we can planning. There are other items that the governor has requested us to post. One is our testing protocol. We are not a medical institution, and the governor's own guidance does not suggest that we do testing. As a matter of fact, it does not encourage that at all, despite what might be confusing relative to media reports and public statements. We are to post a plan, though, for you to know where you as a community can get testing and how that will be coordinated. And that essentially is through the Monroe County Department of Public Health. And the second aspect is very similar, and that's regarding contact tracing. And the contact tracing, again, we are not a public health department, but rather we will coordinate with the Monroe County Department of Public Health on contact tracing and participate actively in contact tracing as it is necessary. And the third and final component is posting of our online learning plan, our all remote, as it were. That is posted. That's part of our plans right now, but it will be conspicuously pulled out and posted for people. And again, we have always held virtual meetings. We will continue to do that, and we have offered people opportunity to provide input, and we will do that as well. The requirement or the request presumably is if districts have not been doing that, our district has been. And so we've scheduled those, and there's an opportunity for people to participate in that, and we welcome that. On reopening, a few just high points again from the 1,000-foot view to make sure people are aware of. The hybrid program has K-12 students attending in person every other day. It's an alphabet split. We've received questions of why A through L on Monday and then not again until Thursday, as opposed to having A through L Tuesday, Wednesday for deep cleaning, same group, less exposure, and then Thursday, Friday, M through Z. We did not opt to do that. We opted for A through L on Monday, M through Z on Tuesday, and are very confident in the cleaning procedures that we've put in place, both for during the day, but also in the evening on Monday and in between the Thursday, Friday session, that we will be thoroughly cleaning, touching all high touch surfaces and each and every desk in between those programs. And the instructional reason for having kids come in that fashion is that we don't want to lose touch with kids who would come on Tuesday, be all virtual on the hybrid remote, as it were, on Wednesday, we're calling it, which is all kids K through 12 will be remote following their cycle day and their period by period schedule 6-12 and a modified schedule for the K through 5, but everybody will do that on Wednesday. That does give an opportunity for a deeper clean on Wednesday. However, we're confident between Monday and Tuesday and between Thursday and Friday for a good clean. The point being, though, if you lost touch with your A through L kids after Wednesday and did not see them Thursday, did not see them Friday, and obviously Saturday, Sunday, that's a long gap in between. And the more regular contact we feel is better from a mental health, social, emotional perspective, but also pedagogically, to be only following up one day independently from the previous day of in-person and seeing your teacher again will likely make for a better continuous learning experience, or preparing for a lesson to come in the flipped model for one day as opposed to 2 days, again, will provide a much more consistent learning experience for our students. As I mentioned, Wednesday is hybrid remote for all students, 6 through 12 following a cycle day schedule. K through 5 schedule will be modified, but it will be meaningful and thoughtful throughout the day. Perhaps, and this is yet to be finalized, starting with some type of community building morning activity, introduction of content, perhaps small group work as well, some type of additional work midday and towards the end of the day. Special areas woven into that schedule as well in an asynchronous fashion, not in a synchronous fashion, but kids will see their teacher on screen quite a bit. In the all remote program, K through 12 students would attend remotely Monday through Friday. 6 through 12 will follow their cycle day and period by period schedule. The courses that students need to progress towards graduation will be prioritized. In this current environment, we may not be able to offer all electives to all remote students. There may be a limited choice of electives. We're focused on providing the core coursework kids need to continue to progress towards graduation and make that work very meaningful. We are concerned about having the capacity depending on how many students elect for this particular model. It is very likely that teachers will be assigned sections of in-person and then also sections of remote coursework at the 6-12 level. K through 5 students would have a schedule similar to what I just mentioned in terms of the student schedule on the hybrid remote day. And 6 through 12 students in this fashion, although they would attend remotely Monday through Friday, attending is not always receiving synchronous instruction. However, 4 out of every 6 days they will. Remember, in our current schedule, they see their teacher 5 out of 6 days. Typically, there's a drop day for our courses, other than in the sciences, which is a little bit different. This would be a 4 out of 6 interaction synchronously. There would be asynchronous instruction provided on at least one of those 2 other days, similar to, again, the drop day concept. And K through 5 students would see synchronous instruction 5 out of 6 days with their teacher and be provided continuous learning on the 6th day. In terms of transportation, very briefly, we're looking at the types of strategies, the nitty-gritty pieces that would keep people safe and healthy, loading from the back to the front, in other words. So the first kids on then are not passing kids, or the last kids on are not passing kids on the seat and perhaps spreading respiratory droplets as they pass them. So these types of little strategies along the way we think will help in terms of reducing the potential for disease being spread. We will be providing social distancing on the buses as much as possible, but masking all the time. Reducing the loads on the buses, and we had a very significant number of people suggest that they would not need transportation, which will help a great deal. We've said no more than 2 per seat. We're aiming for less than that, but have the wiggle room of potentially 2 per seat. And we would look specifically at 2 per seat when we talk about family members, people living in the same household, et cetera. But depending on numbers, we would have even less than that and be able to provide more social distancing. The key on transportation is masking and social distancing as much as possible. And the language specifically in the guidance is different around the musts and the shalls or the shoulds. And right now, social distancing is considered a should, a strong should, but it's not a must. Masking, however, is a must. And if students attempt to board a bus without a mask, they will be provided with one by the driver. There will be some opportunity for mask exemptions, and we will be exploring ways then to transport students who have mask exemptions separately. That will be through a medical process, similar to those who in the past have asked for medical exemptions in other areas of the organization in the past, and forms are being developed for that, which would require medical documentation for anybody to have a mask exemption. More to come on that. In terms of there will be different options. Ordering will be done in advance. We're going to ask people actually to order for their entire week through an app-based product. Food will be available for pickup by hybrid remote or by all remote learners as well through the high school, similar to food service that was provided the entire spring. And social distance will be strictly enforced. Masks will be removed while kids are eating, but they will have plenty of social distance, 6 feet or more in that case while they're eating, again, to reduce potential exposure. Operations wise, the cleaning, as I mentioned, is very thorough in the evening between Monday, Tuesday, between Thursday, Friday. We have procedures during the day that we are putting in place for desks to be cleaned in between each period, or different desks used from period to period. In other words, you could have half your desks used one period, the other half the next period, and then clean every other period. And then Wednesday and Friday, there would be that deeper cleaning, essentially the fogging that people have become accustomed to seeing. The electrostatic decontamination would be done on those 2 particular days throughout the district. Events and activities, we've canceled most, if not all events, a few limited exceptions relative to things like the SAT and the ACT, which we know kids need to participate in to progress towards their college application process. And that is being done on a very limited basis with social distancing in mind as well. Athletics have been canceled by the state association through the 21st of September. Excuse me. We have made limited exceptions for several clubs. For example, the yearbook is the one that is the easiest one to explain, because the process of creating a book really needs to start as soon as the school year begins. And that work can be done remotely. So where we can find ways for some very limited number, yearbook, best example, a link crew is another, some of the student government work where they are planning events and preparing for the year, to get a later start on some of those things, put them far behind, and we don't want to do that, but we still want to limit exposure, of course. So where that can be done safely and virtually, we're allowing for that. There are only 4 or 5 of those involved. We recognize that many other clubs could probably be held virtually, but again, in the sense that we are trying to make sure that we are balancing our focus as an organization, balancing our obligations, and balancing really the health needs overall, we're waiting to start some of those until a little bit later, and mitigating our risk as much as we possibly can, balancing that with kids being able to get projects done that have timelines to them. We also have health procedures in place. I mentioned around screening, and I mentioned around testing and contact tracing relative to the Department of Public Health, which largely will be our source for that. But also screening procedures are important to keep in mind. And those screening procedures are this: families will be provided with an app-based program to indicate on a daily basis before their child leaves every day that they do not have a temperature or any symptoms. And we will ask for that attestation on a daily basis. When they come to school, all students, all adults, all staff will walk through temperature scanners. Those who test high with a temperature will be isolated, and a second temperature will be taken within a period of time to try and reduce the number of false positives. Once a student is sent home with a temperature, they will not be allowed to return to school without a negative test in hand, clearance from a healthcare provider, and resolution of their symptoms. And this is all based on the guidance, again, from New York State Department of Health and also the Monroe County Department of Public Health. I'm going to move through then, and again, ask people to participate in conversations at the virtual town hall on Wednesday evening. And at 7 p.m., each of the buildings has a meeting. Please participate in those. Or next Monday, another virtual town hall at 5 p.m. as well. And we've tried to stagger those times so as to be most convenient for all families as well. And don't forget that family survey is out. We need commitments by the 17th at 8 p.m. And that commitment does lock you in for some period of time. In terms of those who are looking to start in the hybrid program and then go remote, it would take 3 weeks for us to move you into the remote program and have to change schedules, shift resources. Those who get in the room opt to come in person instruction in the program, we would ask for a commitment no later than 5 weeks to be able to join at the 10-week mark, and you would then join the class in person beginning with the second quarter. In terms of the blueprint area, the blueprint focus areas and action steps, let me walk through these, and I'll try and summarize the best I can so I'm not reading them at you, but all this information is posted and very clear for our community members to see as well. These are the very specific things that we're doing going into this year. And the first is in the area of anti-racism and anti-bias curriculum, a commitment we've made in the community, a letter that many, many people in our community are aware of that went home where we specifically have an anti-racism, anti-bias curriculum in place. So what we would like to do in that area is make sure we identify within the K-12 curriculum across disciplines where these concepts could be taught, and then modify our curriculum to bridge the gaps where we have them. And we need to specifically identify elements of anti-racism, anti-bias curriculum. Do we know it? Do we understand it? Develop knowledge and skills, and create tools to vet curriculum instructional practice. We need to provide ongoing professional development, offer counselors more training relative to these concepts, and we need to embed anti-racism lessons in the second steps curriculum at the K-5 level, use teaching talent resources in particular that are available to us, and at the K-2 level, shift how we talk about and teach about things, which we'll be working on this year, and 6-12, develop activities that can be used during Win and Flex with students. And on the right-hand column, again, all this is posted, indicates who will be doing that and when will those things be happening. Relative to culture responsive materials and practices, we need to increase our ability of staff to have difficult conversations with students and others. And we will identify this district person be thinking part in this work, providing anti-bias training to district leadership and the Board of Education. You'll be involved in that as well this year. Family engagement, we need to build to support and implement anti-racist, anti-bias goals. To that end, the action steps will be to assess where families are right now. We'll use a survey that was generated last year by the Family Engagement Subcommittee from the Diversity Equity Committee. We'll reach out to family of color group and all parents specifically as well. Leverage an online component to connect families using a classroom as the organizational structure. So family Zoom nights, perhaps monthly, into what we're learning in second steps, and develop a web presence for the community to go on. We'll collect resource lists in the ways that people can become involved and include the archive list of work to date. Hiring practices, a very significant area for us as well. Our objective would be to continue to find and create environmental attributes to attract and retain high quality faculty members from diverse backgrounds. Our objective also would be to collect, review, and assess exemplary retention procedures and practices with an eye towards strengths, opportunities, and threats regarding improvement. So it's really balanced. It's not just diversifying our staff, but once we've diversified our staff, how do we make sure this continues to be an environment and improve our environment for diverse staff to work in and want to continue to participate in? Specific action steps around that, we'll continue to execute our search process guidelines, procedures for teacher and administrator vacancies, which has diversified our pools of candidates. We'll update protocols to ensure fairness, consistency in the hiring process. We'll continue to enhance our training for committee participants, gather more objective feedback from those participants as well. We'll partner with our teacher center to develop anti-racism and bias series to build a broader network of identified allies and advocates throughout the district. And this is helpful both who we have on interview committees and creating that environment to retain our staff, make sure this is an allies and advocates friendly place, and picking up on programs that have been done in the past to outwardly express our work as allies and advocates. Require a robust anti-racism and unconscious bias training for all district employees as well. You see the overlap here with some of our other areas. Engage experts in organizational behavior to evaluate our physical environment. And, really think about the ways we are promoting commitments to diversity. What does it look like when you walk into our buildings? How welcoming is it? How much are we promoting a diverse environment in terms of those structures, the environment around us as well? We're going to ask the Teacher Center to develop, again, anti-racist bias training series. I'm sorry, I repeated that one. Require robust anti-racism and unconscious bias training for all district employees. Again, you see that overlap. And repeating some of those. Staff training. We're requiring, our objective would be to require refresher and new training on implicit bias for all staff. And our rationale around that is to make sure that we recognize that anti-racism needs attention now and requires a dedicated focus. This Allies and Advocates series, again, building off, using the Teacher Center to build off the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and particularly the videos in school. Very specific stuff that we'd like to make sure people do. Also, we will go beyond just the district administrators and Dr. Washington to roll out in-person anti-racism training, really set the expectations of the district regarding racism, bias, and the maintenance of a safe and discrimination-free work environment for all. Around discipline practices, first objective will be to conduct a K-12 review of the district code of conduct with attention to disciplinary practices, consequences, and how strict practices are being infused into our code of conduct. To that end, we'll require all teachers be trained in restorative practices. A significant work was done last year. We'll continue to build on that. We'll leverage the objectives and training resources documented in the staff training section to apply to student discipline. Develop an education series for parents and students on the purpose and intent of restorative practices, really help people understand what that means and what the impact could be. We'll also partner with the PTSA to report out ongoing progress and initiatives specific to restorative practices, and examine the appeals process for student discipline, providing for purposeful consideration of bias involving Dr. Washington or other designees, looking at facts and circumstances through diversity, equity lens. In terms of our program reviews and student engagement audit, we would really like to increase engagement and connection opportunities for K-12 students and families, continue to focus on those that are new to the district, but we really want all kids to be engaged and connected in our school communities. So to that end, we'll identify potential barriers for students to engage in extracurricular activities. Is it transportation? Is it timing? What exactly is it? We'll understand that. We're going to collect student extracurricular participation data beginning in grade 3, develop communication systems to engage new families, develop, promote communication of clubs activities, even in the remote hybrid environment, or create a repository with resources that are accessible to both school community and larger school community members. Create videos of different clubs activities, for instance, intramurals, so people get a firsthand view, maybe reduce some of the anxiety of joining some of those. Continue to provide families to the district with a copy of the PTA. We'll look at virtual orientation, streamline what we can by school do, and include all programs that families can have access to. We really learn a lot about being able to leverage technology in these situations, and so we'd like to expand our use of that as well. We'll continue to make phone calls to check in with new families throughout the year and collect feedback around what works in connecting families and what doesn't. And finally, mental health concerns. Our objective would be to develop a community connection through restorative practices and social emotional learning, and really strengthen our identification process for K-12 students who are experiencing needs related to mental health issues. To that end, we're going to continue restorative practice training for all faculty and staff. Again, see that overlap between areas. Continue to provide communication with families on restorative practice and how they are utilized, and create a K-12 mental health screening tool as well. We'd also like to develop social emotional learning training to engage students, support adults, and students. Any question on those blueprint action steps? There's certainly a lot of work. I'm very proud of the team for continuing to be able to focus on these bigger pictures, such important issues for us to continue to address despite the crisis, and for all that went into developing those, from the blueprint team to the leadership team to your work with us as well last week in a planning retreat. We'll finalize that, put that into a focused blueprint plan that we would ask you to adopt today in concept, and then we would distribute that to the community and to our teaching staff as well.
Kevin, I would add, first of all, thank you, and thank you to everybody for all the effort around this. And it's an ongoing long-term effort combined with a number of brand new and ongoing and ever-changing type elements as you've laid out. I would make note, and I think you are aware of this, we talked about it earlier, your internet today, there's something about your connection that's not great. And there were a number of portions there that your audio kind of clogged up a little bit. So what I would say to the public, this will all get posted. We're going to take steps in a moment to approve the blueprint plan for the year, and we will make sure that that presentation that you just went through, or all the pertinent elements of it, get posted right away so that people can take a look through that. I would make note, though, to anybody listening, the elements with regard to reopening are all contained within all of the documentation that we did send out and that is posted on the website. So you went through in detail a number of the elements of reopening, and there were a couple of sections there that kind of froze up and glitched up on us. But all that information is available. It's posted online, and we encourage families, parents to take a look through it and read it. And if you have any questions at all with regard to reopening elements, contact Dr. McGowan directly, or the building principal of your child's school. So that's the one thing I would like to add, Kevin, and just one of those things, you know.
I thought I sounded great for what it's worth, but I would
Well, we sound great, but
no, I apologize, and I would say that you're literally missing nothing but the sound of my voice, which is mean you're not missing much because the materials really are very self-explanatory and pretty direct. So I apologize for people not being able to hear all of it, but it is there for people to review as well in greater detail.
yep. No, that's fine. And we will, again, this week, with all the opportunities for not only your live town hall effort on Wednesday night, but all the principal meetings that are beginning, and many more opportunities to just sort of remind. We understand the overwhelming nature of the information that we're sending out. It's just the times that we're in, and we ask everybody's indulgence with respect to community members to read, to ask questions, to understand, and then to, as you very clearly articulated, and we did get that from you, we will deal with families and parents and whatever their choice is, and we will do the best possible job within that framework. So, and that's clearly laid out within the guidance also. So at this point then, board, a motion please for approval of the 2020-2021 Brighton Blueprint Plan.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Larry, seconded by Julene. Are there any further comments or questions, or would we like Dr. McGowan to go through it all again, or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. 7 in favor, none opposed. Thank you very much. Next up today, a motion please for approval of the professional development plan for the district.
So moved.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Christina. Oh, so I'm sorry, seconded by Sue. Dr. Baker, would you like to briefly describe what the professional development plan is all about?
Absolutely. So each year we bring the professional development plan to the Board of Education for its approval. This is a regulatory item by state ed. What this plan does is it really outlines the processes by which we target professional development, the areas not only across our district, but also based upon teacher need, and it codifies how we evaluate the effectiveness of that. Changes slightly every year, and then as Mark, you will recall, in the fall, I'll present to the board an update with regards to the amount of professional development over the course of last year, the preceding year that our teachers have engaged in.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And again, as you said, this is required by State Education Department on a regular cycle basis. And the plan is posted online. We've had a full set of it to take a look at. And the Maria Murillo, our director of the Teacher Center, and the entire policy board, which includes board representation, is involved in this work. And we appreciate everybody's efforts on that. So thank you. And thank you, Debbie, for bringing us up to speed. Does anyone have any questions or comment with regard to that? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Well, thank you. 7 in favor and none opposed. So thank you very much. Next up today, a motion please for approval of conflict of interest with regard to uniform grant guidance regulation. And we'll have a little short discussion on that, but a motion please for approval.
So
So
moved.
moved.
So
Second.
moved by Christina and seconded by Julene.
No, it was Karen and I seconded, right?
Either way.
Motion by Karen, seconded by Julene.
Something like that.
Something like that. So this is a update, if you will, to our policy 6110, Code of Ethics for board members and all district personnel. It's a requirement. It adds some language with regard to guidance around grants and other financial interest that the board would have decision-making ability over, so that we have to disclose if we have an interest in any of these companies or entities who would come before the board with regard to our official duties and our private employment and things like that. And it specifically comes to us under the guidance that covers grant work right at the moment. So it's kind of a automatic requirement. There's really not a whole lot to it other than that. So anything further? Does anybody have any questions or anything to add? Then all in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. That's 7 in favor and none opposed. And then also, we have today another item of approval and a hearing, if you will. The code of conduct on a yearly basis for the district, student code of conduct, is required. It is required that the board approve that prior to the start of the school year. And any changes to that, we certainly bring forward and discuss. So today we have just a topical area change with a few changes. Dr. McGowan, are you going to go through this then for us?
You're muted.
He told me frozen, now he's muted completely.
Apologize.
That's okay.
Okay. Yes, the only proposed change, thank you, to the code of conduct going this year is a very timely and topical one, which is regarding masking, which we recognize needed to be included in the code of conduct going forward. One, I will tell you it's not written here, but the other change we will make is to eliminate the section regarding particularly costumes and students not being able to wear masks. Ironically, and unpredictably at this point, we want kids to wear masks. We previously prohibited masks, but we will have to make that change. The significant area, though, that I would like to point out to you here and open for any comments, as this would be considered public hearing in the code of conduct, is simply around the fact that we need to require, from a public health perspective, that students all the way through, we have a preschool program. We don't have an official pre-K program, but the language in the event that we ever did have a pre-K program should be included in the code of conduct, which is that all students will be required to wear a mask or a face covering when at school or school function, throughout the buildings, facilities, the campus, traveling in the hallways, waiting outside, waiting at bus stops. That's key, waiting at bus stops, and when riding in district provided transportation. They must cover both the nose and the mouth. They may remove masks and face coverings when eating or drinking during assigned breakfast, lunch, snack periods, during instruction or other times when appropriate social distancing measures are in place as determined by the teacher or school administrator, and during quote unquote mask breaks as directed by a teacher or school administrator. Those will be few and far between, and again, can only be done when directed by a teacher or school administrator. Students who refuse or repeatedly fail to wear a mask or face covering set forth in the above will be subject to disciplinary consequences under the code of conduct, and it would be considered insubordination. Repeated failure could lead to suspension of the student from school and or district transportation, and can only be exempted from these protocols if an appropriate healthcare provider certifies in writing that the student is not medically able to tolerate wearing a mask or a face covering, and the district will provide mask or face covering to a student in the case that a student forgets their own. Our code of conduct also applies to employees and to visitors, other members of the school community. Essentially boils down to the exact same requirements in terms of being required to wear them. Everybody will, while they are working or attending a school function, while walking in the hallways, traveling in elevators, district-owned vehicles, etc., when there's more than one individual in the vehicle, wear a mask or a face covering. They must cover both the nose and the mouth. And when people are working in an individual office or workspace, including outdoor areas, they may remove that mask when appropriate social distancing can be maintained. It doesn't apply to common areas such as school offices. In conference rooms, if appropriate social distancing can be maintained, it can be removed, and instructional employees may remove masks or face coverings on a case-by-case basis, again, for instructional needs or other activities, as determined by the employee and in accordance with district protocols, in which case that employee must make sure that there is social distancing as well. Employees who violate protocols are subject to the disciplinary action under either the law or their collective bargaining agreements, and can only be exempt under the same conditions that students could be, and that's with medical clearance to do that. And we would again provide appropriate masks or face coverings when they are not available or brought by the employee. Specifically, volunteers, vendors, parents. I didn't mention this in the reopening, but we are reducing nearly entirely any visitors to the building, anybody traveling in buildings, any in-person meetings in the buildings as well. All visitors are required to wear a mask or face covering while working or attending a school function. Again, all the same type of parameters could be removed if working in an individual office If there's social distancing, it can be maintained in conference rooms where there's social distancing that can be maintained, or is directed by a district administrator or another employee. And if you do not follow those protocols, you'll be asked to leave the grounds and may be refused entry. Any questions for board members on this in particular?
Just a clarification, everybody on slide 1, just the language of, let's see, where are we? Are we on slide 1? Oh. Now I can't find the exact sentence, but there was one where it said, you know, during instruction or other times when appropriate social distancing measures are in place as determined by a teacher or school administrator, I would just, we all agree on this, but I would just want to make sure that it's not, that they're all sitting in a place that's previously determined to be socially distanced so you can return the mask. It really is that at that time, every time before the mask comes off, we want to say that a teacher or a school administrator is saying that now is an okay time. So it's not just the location, it's that it's being directed by the teacher or school administrator. Just the language there. I'm sorry, I just caught it.
No, I appreciate that, Sue. That's certainly in terms of practice. Part of what we'll have to do as school begins is professional development and student education on both masking and social distancing. And so that's a really good suggestion relative to making sure that we say, this is what that means, and this is how that's going to work.
Thank you so much.
Really what you're referring to, Sue, is you're suggesting that it's not an automatic that we did it once and every time I'm in this place, in this situation, I can remove a mask. Each situation is determined by that teacher or other building leadership.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, Mark. You said it more succinctly, but yes, exactly.
Just wanted to be clear that that's what we're conveying. Okay, that's great. Any other comments or questions from board members? Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Then let's have approval of the code of conduct changes, and then I'll ask if there are any members of the public who are remaining on with us today. I don't think we have any, but let's ask for a motion to approve the code of conduct changes for the 2020-2021 school year, please.
So moved.
Okay, who wants to take credit for that one?
Sue can have a second.
Sue, a motion by Sue and second by
Me.
Julie. Anything further? Any members of the public who are on, who have comments or questions? Any staff members, actually? This is a hearing type question right at the moment. So anybody have anything that they wanted to bring forward on those changes for our consideration?
This is Christina. I just had a comment that I was thinking about as we were going over the visitors page. Do we have protocol yet for dropping things off for our kids? Whether they would drop them off outside the building and then be brought in by a staff member?
So as it stands right now, nothing will be dropped off.
Okay.
But we will continue to explore that as we get closer to school and then as the school year starts. But right now, we are not planning on having things dropped off.
Okay.
Can I suggest then that when the principals and when you have your town halls, that's made clear to people, and also in communications, because I think it's a great question. I was a regular mother who dropped off lunches that were left on the kitchen counter, so I sympathize, but it needs to be really communicated clearly.
Yep, that's a very
Thanks.
good point. You
It's
got
a
it.
good point, because to the average individual who may not be aware, the amount of drop off in building is incredible. And any of our principals, especially our younger buildings, would attest to that. Well, I don't know, all of them probably, but anyway. All right, thank you for that add. That's great input. Does anybody else?
Can I just interrupt? That brings up a good point. So in terms of then, will kids be able to eat? How's that going to look? We've moved this online program for people ordering food, and it's going to also be cashless, by the way. So we're working through all those pieces. We'll communicate all that very clearly to families. No student will be denied a meal, though. So similarly, if a lunch is left on the kitchen counter and we're not taking drop-offs, everybody will eat. We'll make sure that there's a meal for that student and an appropriate meal for that student. But that's, you know, all of these, and they sound so restrictive. It's even the individual meetings that people want to have, you know, parent meetings. There will be an argument made by some, and even some maybe watching this morning thinking, well, so they're doing this virtually, but they're going to have kids come back. I would really just simply say to people, we're smarter than that. Not we collectively on the screen right now. We as a society are smart in the sense that we can think thoughtfully about mitigating risk in every way we can and find the right balance. So where we can leverage technology effectively, that's what we're doing. So in terms of parent meetings, in terms of board meetings, in terms of dropping things off and reducing the amount of risk for staff members, reducing the amount of in and out and the potential for visitors who may be symptomatic or infected. We're just simply saying we're trying everything we can to mitigate risk as much as we possibly can, recognizing that having students come in at all, one might say is, well, that's not mitigating risk. It's finding a balance. It's finding a balance, knowing that it's important that kids have kids in person for instruction as much as we can, from a family perspective, from an educational perspective, from a social emotional health perspective. There's so many reasons why it's good to have kids in and why we think we can do that safely, but why not reduce risk where we can? And that's what we're going to do. It doesn't have to be an absolute, well, if you're having kids come in, then I think we can be thoughtful about those things. I think we can make choices and personalize every one of those decisions. Again, mitigating risk to the greatest degree we can while accomplishing the objective in that moment. And if the objective in the moment is to safely bring children into school, then that's of course why we're offering an opportunity to do that. But there's no reason to increase our risk if we can avoid doing that.
Kevin, that's a really great point. And, you know, I was going to bring up in the next agenda item is the approval for our board meeting schedule. And one of the things I was going to bring up for conversation was that element as relates to Board of Education meetings. Our next meeting is on September 15th. We have been discussing whether or not to move to in-person, masked, socially distant in a room, the boardroom or another room that would accommodate us. We've discussed whether we would likely minimize those in attendance to only essential individuals. But at the same time, we're still debating whether or not that's the best course of action, not because of the reasons that you well stated in terms of, well, you should be there if students are there. Minimizing gatherings of individuals, minimizing personal interactions to the extent possible does help to continue down a path and to be able to reassess as we go along. So in other words, if we decide to virtually meet for September meetings, for example, that doesn't mean that we will do that forever. We'll continue to assess and reassess going forward. One of the elements that was brought up to me when we began discussing this, Kevin and Julene and I, was if we're precluding any outside groups or any groups from meeting at nights, weekends, using gatherings, having gatherings in our buildings, if we use the central office for our board meetings at night, that's another cleaning that has to take place before and after. That's another provision that has to be made and take resources away from buildings with students on a daily basis, although there are students at CO. But anyway, so that's continuing, that conversation is continuing, whether it be parent meetings, PTSA meetings, or Board of Education meetings, and we'll continue to look at that, evaluate it, and as time goes on. So anything else with regard to the code of conduct proposed changes that anybody would like to add?
Just one final comment about what we were just talking about. Also, by reducing the number of interactions that we all have and leveraging technology, that is contributing to keeping children safer too, and safer for coming back and for being in person. Again, it's a community safety standard that we should be promoting, which will simply help everybody along the way.
Very good point.
I've said my piece. Thank you.
That's all right. That's great. Does anyone else have any other comments for it?
Well, to that end, and Mark, you alluded to this, it's a cost savings as well to not be having to go through and clean, you know, having our cleaning staff come in and do that. So it would be a cost savings, and to make sure that they're there to be cleaning the classrooms. That's what we're really most focused on, I think.
Exactly. And we'll continue to weigh that. It may be at the end of the day that there's not, they're cleaning the building anyway, and it's no big deal. And we may find, as we discuss as a group, benefits to being together in person versus Zoom, but we'll deal with that step by step. So good point there also. Thank you. All right then. All in favor then, please, of the changes for the year?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. That's 7 in favor and none opposed to the code of conduct changes for the year. Next up, I alluded to a motion, please, for approval of the 2020-2021 Board of Education meeting schedule that you have had. A motion, please, to approve.
So moved.
Approved.
Second.
Oh,
Moved by Andrea and seconded by Larry.
Christina.
Christina. There's multiple voices each time, so. If we continue to meet virtually, we'll do a hand raising or something, then we'll go on that. But anyway, does anyone have any question or comment? The meeting schedule is pretty much set out as you see it. We do have dates and times. Locations are at this point in time, I would say, are TBD, but the remaining, the dates and times are there. So anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. 7 in favor and none opposed. Our reports section. I will make note that we will begin in September reports from the Brighton Teachers Association, the PTSA, and also our Monroe County School Boards Association standing committees will likely begin also. So we'll have those reports added to the report section. So this evening, or this afternoon, what are we? Morning, geez. This morning's meeting, we have the financial reports provided by Lou and Dahlia, which include the budget status report as posted, and also the June preliminary final report or wrap-up reports. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those reports? We're going to talk a little bit in a moment about more matters financial. Does anybody have anything question on those items for Lou? Then can we have a motion to receive those reports, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Larry and seconded by Christina. Anything further? Then all in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We received those reports, 7 aye and none opposed. Dr. McGowan, Superintendent report. Do you have anything further to add?
I'm fairly sure you've heard enough from me.
No, we would never say that.
I want to thank everybody because you're really looking at a lot of what I reported on today. There's an incredible amount of detail that goes behind it, and it's years of, not years of work, but certainly weeks and months of work into days at times, and then adjustments made, more adjustments made, more adjustments made based on feedback from the community, based on changing guidance, and our desire to continue to find ways to make this work for everybody to the best we can, keeping safety as the first priority. So it's really just more than anything a thank you for so many people that have done so much to pull all this together and to shift the way that we're working, and to assure our community that whether your kids are coming in hybrid form or attending all remotely, they will have a dynamic, engaging, thoughtful program going into this year. And it will look very different in so many cases from what we've done in the past, but it will be our standard of excellence and with the situation we have, and that people will do an excellent job. Their passion for serving kids has not changed. The circumstances may have, but their commitment to children hasn't.
Thank you very much and very well said. And on behalf of the board, I would reiterate, we're extremely proud of our leadership team and all the work that's been put in really for 6 or 7 months on where we are right now with so many initiatives, but especially with the reopening and the ability to serve students and families. We appreciate all the efforts by our teachers and our Teachers Association and our entire staff, our buildings and grounds, our custodial staff, maintenance folks. I mean, everyone, our nurses certainly, and their efforts and raising their profile and their importance that's always been there, but that we're seeing even more so right now. I mean, we have worked really, really hard. Our people have, and we appreciate the efforts that all have put in to be able to get to a point where we can offer what we're offering to families, for families to ultimately choose how to pursue educating their children, at least in the short term here moving forward. So, so our thanks and our message of appreciation to everybody on that from the board. So thank you.
Right.
Next up, I'm going to ask Lou, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion, but to start with, may we have a motion, please, for approval of the updated reserve plan as prepared by Lou?
So moved.
Moved by Karen.
Second.
Seconded by Christina. And I want to hold discussion on that. I want to also ask for a motion to approve the 2020-2021 tax levy and rate at this point, and then we'll have discussion on both because they sort of are combined in the elements of information. So a motion for approval of that tax levy and rate, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Larry and seconded by Sue. I think I heard.
Andrea, I think.
Susan.
Oh, Sue?
Okay, thank you very much. So to begin with, what I wanted to say, and I'm going to ask Lou just to give a quick brief overview. We'll discuss in a moment, but we're happy to announce that due to a number of circumstances with regard to the assessment rolls, really, our tax rate will be slightly less than what we had discussed with voters back in May and June. And we also have an updated reserve plan, which we are required to do every year, finishing a year and beginning the new year. So Lou, do you want to give a brief overview of the two elements that I touched on, and then we'll have some further discussion with the board?
Sure. One of the board's responsibilities is to set the tax levy for the year. So as Dahlia Watts and I, we close the fiscal year, and for 1920, we're evaluating available fund balance. And what we've done is we've tried to bucket our prioritization and recommendations to the Board of Education in really three areas. One, there's the real risk of revenue shortfall going into next year, so maintaining liquidity in our allocations to fund balance. And then we have real short and long-term liabilities. So as we were closing and reconciling our accounts, we've updated the reserve fund document for the board to consider additional allocations, trying to provide protection for the district in those three areas.
Okay, thank you very much. And what I would add, before I open it up for further conversation, is that what we're asking to do in these two different motions is certainly to set the tax levy. The adopted levy that we presented to voters was estimated to be 3.83%. The actual will be 3.57%, so that is slightly less. Our total amount collected in taxes is the same. It's just a matter of assessed valuation and where that is within the district. So but it's a positive still, certainly for residents and property taxpayers, that it is slightly less. The other element of it that is just, I would say, very prudent and forward thinking by Lou, as he always has been with us, taking a look at the reserve fund document and the proposal. We have to continue to fund short and long-term situations, but we also have to continue right now to provide relief and to be able to have somewhere to go if state aid is indeed cut one or more times mid-year. And we still wait, I make note, for the Senate and the House to come together on a third plan to include aid to schools and aid to local governments. That is just not happening, right? It's still stalled. So we really have to plan, and Lou has put together a plan, I believe, that's very prudent and forward thinking in that regard to keep the tax levy to a minimal amount to keep funding where we said it would be, but then also in the his recommendations with reserves to have those elements there and covered in reserve should we need them for specific circumstances that could well happen based on the unusual nature of where we are. And the other element of it is that the actual expenses additional to us with regard to the pandemic and opening schools and keeping them open and providing assistance for staff and families and all the things that we've thought of and things yet to come, there will be quite a bit there that will not be covered, we will not receive additional assistance for. We just don't know what that situation will be. So I'm pleased with what Lou and Dolly and the group have put together. And I think it puts us in a great position, as good as we possibly can be, given the fact that we all know that we continue to be working at a deficit from New York State with regard to foundation aid. So does anyone have any questions or comments on the board further to that? On either the reserve recommendation from Lou or the tax levy and rate situation? Okay, then, please, motion please on the updated reserve plan, which then, what it does is it also, in there, you'll see in the language, it provides not to exceed amounts. So those amounts to be designated for reserve are a not to exceed based on our approval. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
7 in favor and none opposed. And then also please vote on the approval of the tax levy and rate for 2020, 2021. All in favor
Aye.
Aye.
and any opposed? Again, 7 in favor and none opposed. Thank you again, Lou and Dahlia, for all your efforts on that in a continuing way that we continue to manage and take a look at that. Next up, motion please for approval of the tentative agreement between the Brighton Teachers Association and the Brighton Central School District.
So moved.
Second. That was moved by Sue and seconded by Larry. And all I'll say on that is thank you to the BTA, our unit, our group. I was part of our group that was part of the negotiating that we spent quite a bit of the second half of the year with the BTA group. And I would call it more of conversation. It was very collegial, very collaborative and cooperative. We enjoy a tremendously positive relationship with our Brighton Teachers Association and our teachers in their entirety. And I would say, as a board member and as board president on behalf of the board, I would thank the BTA for their recognition of the situation that we're in, both from a financial standpoint and from a pandemic standpoint, the need to be agile and ready to go, whether it be hybrid, totally in person, or online learning in a truest sense of the word. So we appreciate their cooperation, we appreciate their efforts, and we appreciate the fact that working with them moving forward, we are in a unique position. So we give them our thanks. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That is approved, 7 in favor and none opposed. Next up, a motion please to approve our consent agenda this morning. I can't get that out.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Andrea and seconded by Christina. The consent agenda today does contain a number of gifts that we do want to acknowledge. A very generous gift from the Brighton Schools Alumni Association of $7,900 for the morning show at the high school. And also a number of gifts. I skipped one. The Nancy Beck Fund made a gift from various donors to the district. And I do want to make note, Nancy's mother passed away earlier this year, and in her memoriam, a number of folks made donations to the Nancy Beck Fund, and that resulted in a donation to the district from the fund. So we want to continue to thank Dave Beck and the Beck family. That has just been a wonderful gift that keeps on giving, and we appreciate not only those donors, but Dave and the family also for that continued effort. And then we also have a number of gifts that were approved over the past short time by the Brighton Education Foundation, and including a gift to French Road of $1,900 for picture books to support discussions on diversity, a gift of $168 for canvas posters to Frez for the entranceway there to support inclusive values, a gift to Council Rock of $4,400 to provide an additional 50 separate sets of recess equipment, and a gift to the TCMS science teachers to be able to attend the National Science Teachers online workshops covering remote science teaching. So again, thank you to the donors to the Brighton Education Fund, and thank you to those of you who are officers and trustees on that fund, and we appreciate those gifts also.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Yes.
I really appreciated the note at the bottom of the gifts from the Brighton Education Fund that they have, for the time being, revised their policy around accepting grant requests and funding them in these changing times. I think that that's a great thing for that organization to do.
That's perfect, Karen. I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, absolutely. And it's we have great folks that are devoted to running that organization, and we certainly have very generous donors who continue to donate and provide the resources to be able to do that. So thank you, and thank you for recognizing that. All in favor of the consent agenda, please?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That's 7 in favor and none opposed. Dr. McGowan, anything further items of business before we adjourn to executive session?
No, just everybody stay healthy and happy, and we'll continue to work with individuals and the entire school community to do our best on their behalf.
And attend all the virtual discussions over the next week or so.
Please do.
Board members, anything further for us today?
Hey, Mark, I'm sorry. I would just quickly say, I had a chance to do a quick walkthrough with John Novelli at Council Rock yesterday. It's amazing. And, you know, somewhere on our list in the fall, in an appropriate socially distanced way, we ought to get through a couple of these buildings. I say it a lot, but the work that Lou's team, these buildings folks are doing to get ready for September and everything, it's amazing. But Council Rock is a pure transformation. So I hope we have a chance to do that in the fall.
Yeah, we absolutely, it's on the list, Larry. We'll see how, we don't want to impose on any.
No, right. And don't want to create extra cleaning and everything. I got that, but it's impressive.
That is one of those things we have to get Sue her own hard hat, but that is something we definitely want to do, and not only Council Rock, but we want to take a look in all 4 buildings at any updated construction, and we'll figure that out in the right time where we're not intrusive and can make that happen. So thank you very much. And I encourage anybody to just drive by the new front. You know, Matt showed us a picture when we were together at our planning day, but it is unbelievable how that building is transformed. So.
And you can see the Matt Tappan 18-ton rock that's in front now, so.
All right, having said all that, and Debbie and Lou, if you're available, we welcome you to join us in executive session also, if you can. If you can't, that's okay too. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to an executive session to discuss employment of specific individuals. And I remind the board that there is a link in your OneNote to be able to do that. So motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Larry, seconded by Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7 in favor, none opposed. We're adjourned to executive session. Thank you very much, everybody.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.